Okay, all the other sections are very similar to each other. All it is that you have your other land acquisition costs. Now, if you want to call it something else, you know that these are the cost heads. You can come here, change the name. So we had other land acquisition costs, and you can call that something else. Change the cost code, head code, whatever you want to do that. You can change all of them over here, and they will automatically get reflected over here. So let's say I'm here and I want to change this other land acquisition cost to let's see what happens. That's what I want to call it. So now when I come back here and I want to change the header over here, which is the cost head, for example. Now, cost head is not very not similar to the cost scores that we have here. These cost scores can immediately show you that they have to be updated, and you can select and quickly update them. But over here, it will not show you an error. If you type 7001, you will not see what we just did over here. You will not see, let's see what happens over here. The reason for that is that this is working off another sheet, so which is already connected at almost live, like it gets updated almost in real time with the master data. So if you click on this section over here and you select your cost codes over here, you'll see that this is where it's showing you this red section where it says invalid input, because we have gone ahead and changed the see what happens over here. So if I want to change that over there, I need to come in and update my cost heads for all these sections over here. So if I change this to 7001 and I see, let's see what happens over here, I have to come in and update that section over here. And that is why when you'll be customizing this to work based on what you want it to look like, to create your template for the very first time, you will have to do that in order to update this section. So now it is telling me, hey, this is wrong because there is no other land acquisition cost available. So now if I press 7001, you'll see that we have our cost code over here that says, let's see what happens. So let me just go back and reverse this thing out, because we do not want let's see what happens, so to speak. So I can come back here, go into my cost categories here and change that to 7001 and make sure that they are exactly the same here. So now I can hide this thing out and not worry about it at all. So I can come back here, 7001, and I've got other land acquisition costs, which is what it was to begin with. So there's not a lot in here to explain, because each of these sections is a cost head and has all these different cost codes that fall under that. The main thing to notice with all these sections is that the last two lines here, 35 and 36, and you'll see over here, so each one of this is a section. So you see when you expand them, you'll see from 22 to 35 are your input cells. Now this bottom one, which is just above the GST input credit or refund cost code that we have, so if you've got GST or VAT applicable, that needs to be here in this row, because that's how the calculations work. So any kind of calculations that are happening for GST are happening in this row. So if you wanted to change that, you can. So, but this is just contingency, a cost code allocated to contingency. So if I go here into my cost codes and I look at where my contingencies are, what was this number over here, 7012. So if I'm looking for 7012, which is right here, which is called the contingency on the land acquisition. Now this portion here, with all the calculations that happen in this cell are different to the calculation that are happening up here. That is why that shading is there, to visually show you that this is a different kind of cell and that's a different kind of cell. So as we know that blue cells are all our input cells. I didn't input a contingency number for each of the cells because I didn't want it to look very cluttered. But you can. So let's say development entity setup. So let's say you're setting up a new trust to do the development, or you're setting up a new LLC to do a development. What you can do is put 20 $2,500. That's what it's going to cost me, and I'm allowing 5% extra because I'm not sure what it's going to cost me. Or you're getting a valuation done for $1,150, and you are not sure what it's going to be, but it should be within the 10% range. So if you add all these things, you then have to, the next thing that you need to do before you go and press save and refresh. Well, save and refresh you can press anytime, but to make sure that you've already added a scope, you entered all the input required for that row before you press that, because it's the same calculation, it's the same time. So what I do need to know is that, okay, I'm gonna have the development entity set up before my settlement happens. So these are the things that you need to think in advance. And for that purpose right here, I will go into my project setup and look at, okay, I'm settling on this date. That means my entity needs to be ready before that. So anywhere between 3rd of February to 1st of June, I should have my entity ready. So that could happen, let's say in April. So you got the entity ready, set, go. So I can come in here, easily select 1st of April. That's when I'm going to set it up. And there's going to be a single payment. How many payments am I going to make for this $2,500? One. I'm just going to make a single payment for that. The evaluation, which is pre-purchase, again, I'll have to get this thing done before I settle. So let's say in first of May, I can get my my evaluation done, get it across the line, and not worry about it. So those are the only two things that I wanted to add over there. Now this is just an extra contingency. It doesn't need to be here. You can change that, because that contingency is calculated based on the percentage that you add on top of this. So let's say, click on save and refresh and see what happens. And what this will do is it'll calculate your start date, your duration, and it'll give you the end date so that you can then forecast the cash flow onto the months section that we have here. So this is telling me I've allowed 5% contingency over here, which is 26251265, and it is posting out that expense into the month that's required. And this is where the contingency, this bottom line here where I have a contingency for every cost head, is basically telling me this 5% and 10% that you allowed for these individual costs. Altogether, they're about $240 that you've allowed for as a contingency over here. And that is all there is to it. So if I wanted to, let's say I was back here and I said, oh, it could span, I could make this payment in 3 lots or whatever. And you wanted to, distribute this in a moderately steep S-curve or whatever. You can do that. You can press that button and it'll do that for you. But usually the S-curve distribution, especially when it is steep or any kind of steepness in that S-curve, is used when we are allocating the construction costs. So you can see that it just breaks that down easily. But if I want to stick with straight line and just have that split equally in 3 different parts, it can do that as well, so that you can allocate your cash flow and forecast it as close to possible, as close to reality as possible. So these are the things. So now when you go down and you add all these values, so let's say I've got this council contribution 60 grand that I want to allow for, and again I don't have the correct code, but I know that this should be within 10% of that 60k mark. I can do that. I can come in here and I know that this will happen sometime in November after I've started construction. So let's see, I was starting construction on 1st of December in 20. So I can come here. So I've already started construction. So 1st December 20. So this could happen on 1st of April in 21. This is when I might be able to, I might get an invoice to pay this thing. And the council allows me to split this into 3 different parts, so I can select all these things and then press save and refresh, and you'll see that the only reason it was showing error was because we didn't have a date over here, because although we had money over here, so we were getting a total of 60K, but that money wasn't getting distributed into our cash flow table. So these table, there's a double check mechanism set up so that it checks all these things. So these are all different costs that you can forecast them onto your cash flow. So if I again zoom out and minimize everything to show you an overview, this is what it looks like. I can click on this and expand all the rows to see what they look like. Except for the land acquisition, everything is exactly the same, except for two things: selling and marketing costs and your construction costs. And let's zoom in and find out what's different about them. So over here we've got our selling and marketing costs. Now there are costs like advertising, 3D renders, brochure printing, display suite, anything, all sorts of different costs that you can use and allocate them. But these costs are all manual. You can enter them manually. However, this last bit here, which is your agent's commission and signing, this has deliberately been left in black text, which basically means don't touch it, or if you're touching it, make sure you are careful of what you're doing. So if you change the name to agent's commission at signing and you want to call it something else, you have to make sure you do that everywhere else as well. That means all the sheets that you've got here, the sheets that this doesn't use that, and over here as well, because this is picking up all the commissions that you will have to pay at the time of signing only. So remember, in this video over here, we allocated that some of the commission that we have to pay, we will have to pay that upfront. So over here we said that 50% of the commission would be due at the time of signing the contract. So if we put that over here, what this sheet is doing is automatically picking that up from the other sheet, which is 238. So that's the amount of money that we will have to pay upfront. So the remaining commission that is owed at the end of the project, which is at the time of the settlement, when all the sales are being closed, that's the time the remaining sales comes into effect, and we don't really have to worry about it because that section is not part of this, because that just comes out. That's the money that we would never see, because that will get deducted from the total revenue that's coming in, and that's the reason that's not here. But don't worry, I'll explain all these things, how they come together. So these are your selling and marketing costs, and over here we've got this section that automatically picks up our agent's commission for that section. So, and in our construction, you'll see that whatever cost that we had allocated for our construction, for commercial and for residential, they also are in black because they're getting picked up automatically. Now we have a 5% contingency that we allow on top of the total construction because the banks like to see that, and you can allow them over here, and that'll tell you what's the total contingency that you have allowed in your construction. So that altogether it's about 9.4 mil over here, and the dates also get automatically picked up in this section so that they can be so that they can be forecasted for the construction period over here. So let me just zoom out a little bit. So let's just go here, and in this section that we have, let's say in my forecast method I use S-curve, but over here I want to change that to let's say moderate, and I want to change both of them there. So keep both of them similar so that if it is the same construction that's happening, it's not going to be two separate kind of construction. So but it's up to you, because you can see the way it gets distributed. So if I go save and refresh, whoops, I didn't press the button, you will notice that it would change the distribution to based on our S-curve and the steepness of the S-curve that we have chosen. So these are the only things that you have to worry about, apart from just entering the values for each one of these. And what I'm going to do is that I'll take a break and enter all these values, and in the next video I'll show you after I've entered all the values and what does it look like, so that we can do a mock feasibility in this training, because all that has an effect on your GST as well. And I'll do another video explaining the GST section as well, for those people who to whom GST would be applicable, or if you change the name from GST to VAT, you can change that to VAT, and then that would work as well. So I'll catch you in the next video.